New Mexico. You've probably heard its nickname, the Land of Enchantment. It's a great phrase, for sure, but what does it actually mean? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dig into that. We're going to unpack the story behind the name, the land, the people, and the history that makes this state truly one of a kind.
And yeah, this isn't just some marketing slogan they slap on a license plate. It's the state's official identity. Now, they only made it official back in 1999, but the feeling it describes, that enchantment, has been a core part of New Mexico's story for centuries.
And that really is the big question, isn't it? What is it that's so enchanting? Is it the landscape? The mix of cultures? The history? Well, as we're about to see, the answer is all of the above. It's a really complex and fascinating mix. Okay, first things first, you have to understand the land itself. Because the enchantment, it really begins with a geography that's full of these dramatic and honestly pretty surprising contrasts. To get a handle on those contrasts, you have to appreciate the sheer scale of the place. New Mexico is the 5th largest state in the entire country, and all that space means there's room for an incredible amount of diversity in its landscapes.
I mean, just look at this. This says it all, right? On one hand, you've got these incredible, almost alien-looking white gypsum dunes in a massive desert. And then, just a few hours' drive away, you can be at the snow-covered 13,000-foot summit of Wheeler Peak. That kind of extreme difference is what really defines the land here.
So whatever single picture you have in your head of New Mexico, you might want to broaden it. It is so much more than just one thing. It's a place where these huge, colorful deserts and rugged mesas exist right alongside vast, green forested mountains.
Now, that dramatic landscape is home to an equally unique blend of people and cultures. And this human tapestry, well, that's the second key to understanding what makes this state so enchanting. You know, you can tell a lot about a place by the languages people speak, and this chart tells a really powerful story. English is the majority, of course, but look at the huge presence of both Spanish and Navajo. These aren't recent additions. These languages have been shaping this region for hundreds of years.
In fact, get this, New Mexico has the highest percentage of Hispanic residents of any state in the U.S. We're talking almost half the population. That is absolutely central to the state's character.
And this isn't just about recent immigration either. A huge portion of this population can trace their family roots all the way back over 400 years to the original Spanish colonists of Nuevo Mexico. That is a depth of history you just don't find in many other places in America.
And right alongside that deep Hispanic heritage is another crucial layer. New Mexico has the second highest percentage of Native Americans in the country, right after Alaska. The enduring presence of nations like the Navajo, Pueblo, and Apache is woven into the very fabric of the state.
You know, if you want a perfect symbol of this cultural fusion, you don't have to look any further than the state flag. The scarlet and gold, those are the royal colors of Spain, and that icon in the middle, that's the ancient sun symbol of the Zia Pueblo. It's just a powerful, simple visual of the two cultural pillars that define New Mexico. But of course, this unique blend of cultures didn't just happen in a vacuum. No, it was forged through a long and often pretty turbulent history of shifting borders, competing empires, and yes, conflict.
And the history starts with a really surprising fact about its name. You hear New Mexico, and you probably think it was named after the country of Mexico, right? Well, actually, the name New Mexico is way older. Spanish explorers named the region Nuevo Mexico back in the 1500s, hoping they'd find another wealthy empire like the one the Aztecs or the Mexica had further south.
So you can see from this timeline that this land has lived under multiple flags. First, it was a remote province of the massive Spanish Empire. Then, it became part of an independent Mexico. And finally, after the Mexican-American War, it was handed over to the United States and became a U.S. territory.
And these maps really drive that point home. Look at the one on the left. That's the massive province of Nuevo Mexico back in 1824. Then, just a few decades later, on the right, you see it's been split up and redefined as a U.S. territory. It's just such a clear visual of how contested this region has always been.
So, after a really long time as a territory, New Mexico's modern story begins in the 20th century. And this is where it would play a surprisingly central role in some major world events. It was a long time coming. After more than 60 years as a territory, statehood finally arrived. On January 6, 1912, New Mexico officially became the 47th state. It was a huge milestone in its long and complicated journey.
Just a few decades later, Those remote, quiet landscapes of New Mexico suddenly became the secret epicenter of the atomic age. The top-secret Manhattan Project labs at Los Alamos and the Trinity test site in the desert, they forever linked the state to one of the most powerful and, let's be honest, terrifying moments in all of human history.
But the 20th century also brought critical fights for civil rights. For decades, the state used tax laws as a way to stop many Native Americans from being able to vote. This quote here is from a 1948 federal court ruling that finally struck down those discriminatory laws. It was a huge victory, especially for Native American veterans who had fought for freedom overseas, only to be denied their basic rights back home.
So when you see an icon like Shiprock, which is a sacred site for the Navajo Nation, you're looking at more than just a stunning piece of geology. It's a symbol of it all: the timeless landscape, the deep indigenous roots, and the state's enduring spirit.
Which brings us right back to our original question, the enchantment. It isn't just about the pretty scenery. It's the powerful, sometimes tense, and always fascinating mix of everything we've talked about. A land of incredible contrasts, a tapestry of deeply rooted cultures, and a long, complicated history forged by clashing empires.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Every single state has a story like this, a reason for its unique character that's buried in its land and its people. What other stories are just waiting to be unpacked, hidden in the landscapes right outside our own front doors?